All right, welcome Columbus Starseeds. Evening's first of its kind, I believe. Well, I'm Dylan Lewis Monroe from Cincinnati. Came all the way up here to see y'all, and I'm going to be talking about Lord Ashtar today. Show of hands, who has heard of Lord Ashtar?
Okay.
All right, about half of you. Well, this crazy mythology or religion, whatever you want to call it, goes all the way back to the 1950s. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the history and a little bit of my own experience, how I came to find this information, how I validated it to myself as much as I have validated it. You know, there's always this thing in the back of your mind, like, is this all just made up woo-woo, or is there actually an actual being named Ashtar out there? And I still ask myself that question every day, but I have a lot of evidence that the Pleiadians and Ashtar have actually given me information and abilities that have allowed me to create a lot of these diagrams that I have done. Little preface on myself, by the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm the creator of the Deep State Mapping Project, and I create information diagrams to explain our reality to people that has spanned everything from explaining our government, international affairs, to COVID crisis, to a lot of other things. Deities, healing, energy, and let me just get to my little history here. But first, let me talk about Ashtar. So who is Lord Ashtar? Lord Ashtar has been a key figure in UFO channeling circles for over 7 decades, beginning in the 1950s. Also known as Ashtar Sharan, he's recognized as the supreme director in charge of the spiritual program on Earth, referred to by the Pleiadians as Shan. Ashtar operates under the leadership of the benevolent ascended master Sananda. Sorry, I can't see my notes with my sunglasses. Sananda is previously known as Jesus prior to his ascension, after his resurrection. Ashtar is responsible for the airborne division of the Brotherhood of Light, working in coordination with Archangel Michael and the great central sun government of this galaxy. His messages are beamed to Earth from starships beyond our atmosphere and from Pleiadian outposts on the planet Venus. He's loved for his deeply philosophical approach to our global problems and his valiant efforts to raise our planetary vibrations. Ashtar Command became more involved in our planet after the development and successful testing of the hydrogen bomb in 1952, when the Pleiadians recognized the need to intervene in order to mitigate or prevent man-made global catastrophe. This program was called the Guardian Action. They also formulated contingency plans for the evacuation of key personnel from Earth in the situation where planetary disaster could not be prevented. So how did I discover Ashtar? This might be a little bit of a letdown story because I actually don't remember the exact moment or person who told me about Ashtar or the Pleiadians, but I do know certain things on this timeline that are concrete, established. The first one being in summer of 2017, I read Barbara Marcinayek's book, The Bringers of the Dawn. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of that. I know we've listened to it on tape before, some of us. It's a really powerful book that is almost the most important book you can find. It's a general sort of Pleiadian philosophy book. And after I read that book that summer, I'm not even sure how I found it, how I discovered it, just intuitively drawn to it. Nobody told me to read it. There's not, some leader pushing it on me. But after that summer, I made my first major diagram called the Q-Web, the main one I'm known for, in the fall of that year. So at that point, I didn't really see the connection myself between reading that book and making the diagram. That's the diagram I sort of became more well known for globally, actually. That's my diagram that has sort of had the biggest impact on the world. But looking back now, I see a connection there between reading that book and then this project sort of entering its more public growth phase. So again, that book actually does not mention Ashtar. It's like the Pleiadian, maybe I shouldn't say Pleiadian Bible if we're in a church, but it's like the most important book about the Pleiadians, but it actually doesn't talk about Ashtar. It's very Pleiadians in general. Barbara Marcinike doesn't actually refer to any specific entities. So I'm not sure when I actually heard about Ashtar. I think I probably actually saw Ashtar before I actually heard of his name. And maybe it was in a shop in Sedona, maybe it was online, but we just saw this blonde spaceman, and I was really drawn to that imagery. I felt like this is someone benevolent, and I want to look into this more. I wasn't like, join the cult. I was just like, I want to look into this more. It's interesting to me. I feel like the vibration is right, and so kept looking into it. A lot of people do say Ashtar is a cult. You'll hear a lot of New Age channelers or YouTube channels saying that Ashtar is a cult, that is bad, it's the Illuminati's behind it. And as far as I've looked into it, I haven't found that, and I have found more dirt on people saying that than actual Ashtar himself. But I think it's important to recognize there is no one that's the lead person responsible for promoting Ashtar. I mean, if anyone isn't, maybe it's me on Earth, but is a fully decentralized spiritual philosophy and an understanding of the exopolitical hierarchy, which means politics that go beyond our planet. So how could it be a cult if there's no one on Earth leading it? And if Ashtar himself is leading it, then that would confirm that it's real. So following my journey here, after I created the Q-Web, another sort of 9 months went by, and that summer, the summer of 2018, I was going to visit a friend in Greece, and we were headed to an island, and I said, well, if I'm going to Greece, I've got to go to Delphi, because in that intervening year, I had done more research on Barbara Marcinike and heard her say on the video that she had had her Pleiadian awakening after visiting the Oracle at Delphi, which is a spiritual site in Greece in the city of Delphi. It's way off in the mountains. It's a tiny little town. And she had gone there, visited the temples. There's temples to Athena and Apollo primarily in that temple complex. And that very night is when Barbara Marcinike started channeling, and she was doing oral, verbal channeling, and just it all came out that very night that she had first visited Delphi. So I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking I would like to develop these abilities. I would like to have the same experience as Barbara Marcinike and just have all this wonderful information pouring out of me. And so I demanded that we add Delphi onto this Greece trip. And I didn't have the exact same experience as her. I didn't start channeling that night, but I think with a lot of these events where we're receiving energy or receiving light codes, as I call them, it takes a little bit more time to process it. And I think that's exactly the case of what happened with me and Delphi, similar to reading the book. So I didn't really have an immediate response to it. However, around Thanksgiving of that year, 2018, I had a vision one morning, just waking up out of the blue. It was very chaotic. There was family in town, so it wasn't the time really to be creative, but I had this very intense vision one morning of my diagram that became the healing web, which, previously I had done a lot of research before my diagrams. They were very meticulously planned and then slowly developed. The healing web was the first one where it really came all in one vision. And I mean, this is a very complex diagram. I probably should have brought these diagrams to hold up. I can put some of them out on the table afterwards for you guys to see exactly what I'm talking about. But the healing web came all in a vision on one morning. And of course I had to do more research, flush it out a little bit, but that was the first one where I really kind of saw the whole thing before I actually did it. And I ultimately attributed that to Pleiadian, just light code being right in. And I mean, the healing web is probably one of the most important diagrams at this time with this global pandemic happening, because it teaches people the difference between big pharma and holistic medicine and gives you the options of how you want to treat all these different conditions. But we're not here to talk about that. I have a lot of diagrams, and I could easily go off on a lot of tangents, but we're focusing on Ashtar here. In spring of 2019, I had a little experience. I had my first psilocybin experience, and that night when I was going to bed, sort of after the effects of that had faded off, I just randomly kind of chose to do well, I guess I'd call it an Ashtar meditation. So right before I was going to bed, I envisioned myself sort of leaving my body, going up to a light ship, and sitting down in like a beautiful spaceship-esque meditation room with Ashtar, with little waterfalls pouring out of each side and little channels like trickling down, and Ashtar just sitting there in the middle, just so zenned out, just staring off into space, staring at the horizon of our planet, and just had a little meditation with Ashtar. And that night I had some really crazy dreams about actually visiting Jerusalem and walking through like a waterfall of light pouring off one of the temples. And then that next morning, I started automatic writing, just like, I was just in bed, half asleep, just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And those writings continued actually every day for nearly 9 months after. Well, really every day for about at least 3 months, and then they started dissipating, getting less and less frequent. But this was my channeling that came through, and I ended up calling it the Auric B Codex. And it ultimately became 5 codexes. Now this isn't a codex like, 1,000-word Bible, but it's, I would say, short codexes that are each sort of delineated by a theme, starting and ending. And I really put most of it out just for free for information for people to have. And I got a lot of negative responses at the beginning, people saying, you don't know what you're talking about, you've lost your mind, you've gone crazy. And I just knew that this information I was receiving was important, and that I was receiving it because I had an audience at the time of like 20,000 people on Instagram, and that I was receiving this information because the Pleiadians wanted me to put it out there. And so I did, and I took the slings and arrows, and I don't regret it. And there is still one codex I haven't shared publicly of the 5, the last one I didn't share yet. And so I ultimately plan to, I think, put that out in a book. But most of it is out there for free right now, which I think a lot of channelers don't really do, but this was so important information that I felt the need to get it out. Continuing my journey into investigating Ashtar, in February of 2019, I made my journey to Giant Rock. And now this is on the Ashtar timeline here. I'm going to get to this poster in just a minute here, but this is just how I discovered everything. This poster came after all of this, what I'm describing to you. So what Giant Rock is a location in Landers, California. This is off in the desert, about 3 hours east of Los Angeles. And this is the location where George Van Tassel set up shop. He had actually an airport there, and it's where the first UFO conventions were held in the 1950s. Now this is just at the very, very dawn of UFO research in the United States, and George Van Tassel was a pioneer of that. And George Van Tassel was also the very first person to channel Ashtar. So on the Ashtar timeline, George Van Tassel is right here, way down at the bottom, because you could say that he invented Ashtar, or you could say he's the first one that ever channeled Ashtar. And he was also the first one to host big UFO conferences in the 1950s. I mean, imagine that. In the 1950s, people would laugh your face off if you said that you believed in aliens. And he's out there in Landers hosting UFO conferences at Giant Rock. So I wanted to go to Giant Rock to see what the energy was like, and sort of just, maybe talk to some people around there, just try to find out what's behind all this. Why was this location chosen? Is this an energy center? And I mean, I have a whole video about this trip. I have a YouTube channel called New Templars, and we documented this trip. And it was just so synchronistic. Everything that happened on that trip, from going to Giant Rock, feeling the energy of it, people that appeared while we were there, this woman from Sedona who has like something called White Angel Academy, and she was like a real estate person that just went super Pleiadian, probably like a lot of us here, but actually was making a business out of it and doing spiritual retreats, and we met up with her and she was doing all this light language, and then we went to this other place nearby called the Integratron, which was designed by George Van Tassel as a reverse aging healing regeneration chamber. And it was supposed to spin and be all wired with copper, and the location was chosen because it was on geomagnetic ley lines. And so this was literally originally designed to reverse people's age. Now, unfortunately, the FBI heart attacked George Van Tassel before he finished the building slash device and stole the blueprints, and now the property is apparently owned by witches, even though it is a really cool place to still visit because they do sound bath healing sessions in the space. It's like this huge white domed, completely wooden room. It's really beautiful. And the sound baths are amazing. I think now they're requiring a vaccine to do one, but they also had an amazing gift shop that was very well developed. It was just like the coolest little Pleiadian encampment out in the desert, even though it's supposedly run by witches now. But we talked to some people there who actually had known George Van Tassel himself, and they came right up to me and they were like, "Dylan, you're here." And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, they're like, "We know you." I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." So a lot of synchronicities. Then the second time we went back to Giant Rock, these people were bringing around this giant, like 10-foot statue of, who was it, Kuan Yin? One of these female ascended masters. It was just this thing on the back of a truck bed that was this huge Kuan Yin statue. And it was just there, you know, doing a little photo shoot. We were just like, okay, I mean, this statue was probably only there for like 10 minutes. We happened to show up, all of us there. So it was just like, wow, the Ascended Masters are really on top of this one. So yeah, the trip to Giant Rock just really confirmed a lot of what I was already feeling, that I was drawn to this information, and that, you know, as I pursued this information, more opportunities, more ideas, more downloads just kept coming my way. And so it's just more and more confirmation rolling in. So I knew at that point that I wanted to create a diagram specifically for Ashtar that would be the Ashtar timeline, and I wasn't getting any downloads for it. Like, Ashtar didn't want to help me with this one. And so, you know, it was in the middle of COVID. That year I had done the DARPA map and I had done the COVID 5G map. And that summer I was like, you know what, I've got to put my head down and force myself to do this Ashtar timeline. And I barely got any help with it from the Pleiadians, but I uglied through it. And what this is, at its most core level, is a timeline of the most important publications and YouTube channels, channelers, pertaining to the Pleiadians and Ashtar. And so, I don't think we need to go through the entire thing necessarily, but, you know, as I said, George Van Tassel was the first. There was a lot of magazines and other books, channelers around the 50s, 60s. Edward Billy Myers, a really important one. He has a lot of UFO photos from Switzerland that a lot of people would say look pretty fake. I'm still not 100% sold on that, but he also has a lot of channeling that is pretty real. So he's an important one to look into. Vrillon took over the TV in England in the 1970s and put out this Pleiadian message that was warning people against nuclear Armageddon. The Phoenix Journal is a really important one that actually connects with the guy I worked with on my YouTube channel. It was a monthly channeled journal that came out, and they were putting out a journal once a month for almost 15 years. And it was like a long book, just pure channeling. And some of it was Ashtar, a lot of it was Commander Hatton, which is another Pleiadian commander that works with Ashtar. There was a lot of Sananda, which is Jesus. They have just a whole archive, and I've only read a couple of them, but my partner on YouTube, who calls himself Veil Removed, actually worked for the Phoenix Journals, and so he's read all of them, and he's constantly referencing back to them. He has them all as like a PDF that he can search and find stuff really easily. So that's a good one to look into. Celestial Rays is the biggest book I have on that table over there, and it's a book all about cloud ships, which are connected with the Pleiadians, Ashtar, and probably other benevolent extraterrestrials that when they come in our atmosphere, they disguise themselves as clouds. And scientists call this type of cloud a lenticular cloud. They don't really act like normal clouds. Like they park above powerful mountains to recharge, and once you start reading the clouds and start understanding that some of them may be disguised craft, you see the sky and clouds in a whole different way. So that's kind of like the Bible of cloud ships. And then Tulel is a really important one because she was one of the main independent Ashtar channelers for a long time, and she compiled the Ashtar Tribute book, which the Ashtar Tribute book was a combination of her channeling and a lot of other channeling from others up until the point when she made that book, and there have been also addendums to that book. And so that for me was a really good reference. That's actually how I built a lot of the timeline from before Tuella, was by referencing that book, seeing who else she included in it. And an important thing about that book is that these are a lot of different channelers channeling Ashtar. I think in that book is probably about at least 7 other different channelers channeling Ashtar. And that's very different from a lot of other people in the spiritual community who say, they basically trash anyone's channeling that isn't theirs. That happens quite a bit. And so I really like the concept of that book because it was like Tuella, had no problem with validating other people's channeling. And not even all the channeling sounds the same. Some of them are very like like Old English, and some of it's more modern. There's different tones, but it's all the same message. So are the Pleiadians and Ashtar sending messages where to one person it's in Old English, to another person it's in modern English? Maybe. I mean, why not? They're extraterrestrial beings. Like, they communicate via psychic communication and via light codes. And so, English is second language to them, and they can probably express themselves in English however they want, or any other language. There's a whole other set. Is it on here? Yeah. There's whole other sets of channelers in other countries. Like, there's a very big Ashtar following in Brazil. That obviously I can't read any of the Portuguese, so I don't know what it's saying, but every time I've looked into this, it's all in alignment. There's not any channelers that really contradict each other than the ones that say Ashtar's a cult to not look into it. So I want to read a few things on this timeline. Oh, did I get through the whole thing? Well, then there's Barbara Marciniak. Obviously, I've mentioned her, she's important. And then these are I've actually put myself on the timeline, like, not to blow my own horn, but I took the time to put this together, so I'm like, I'm gonna put myself on here. So yeah, there's some newer ones, and not all of these are specifically Ashtar either. Some of them are more Pleiadian oriented, but all the books and all the channelings, they really align to a degree that's almost uncanny if it was all just made up independently. So I want to read some of the text that I put on this diagram. A lot of the text I put on this diagram it was kind of like all chopped up pieces from that Ashtar tribute book. So it's from different channelers, but I pieced it all together for this timeline to sort of make sense. So what is the mission of Ashtar Command and the Pleiadians? This is from my summary of all the information I've read, what I would say it is. Advance the spiritual program on planet Earth. Teach man to harmonize with our concept of constructive and progressive living. Pledge allegiance unto the one great source of all, the Radiant One, and allow all that is of a lower vibratory nature to fade into the limbo of forgotten things. Prevent planetary Armageddon at all costs. Intervene in the instance of pole shift or outbreak of nuclear war. Evacuate all light workers should all fail-safes collapse. Much valuable time will be saved if you are already attuned to us. So that last statement just means that you've already sort of processed the idea that these beings may be out there, that they may be ready to help us in a calamity, that when they suck you off this planet and bring you to their ship, you will have less of a panic attack. You will be mentally prepared. So this brings us to a part of this diagram called the cosmic hierarchy, which is a very important part of the diagram, and it took me quite a bit of time to really sort it out, to understand what the cosmic hierarchy actually is. And in the Ashtar tribute book, there's kind of slightly conflicting accounts, like they'll say, the Brotherhood of Light in one instance, or the Galactic Sun Government in another instance. So some of these things, there are multiple interpretations of what the group or organization is actually called. But I consulted with Veil Removed on this, and this is what the two of us have come to as what we consider the most accurate hierarchy. Let me just turn this a little bit so I can see. So we have, first, the lowest level of the hierarchy is the light workers. That's probably a lot of us in the room, people who are trying to spread the light on the planet and do good things. And then we have the ground crew above that, who are the ones, the light workers who are more directly connected with the higher beings above on the ships. Now I threw on here Gamma Q, which is very personal to me, but for me Gamma Q was the one I was channeling in that Auric B codex I mentioned earlier. And for me, Gamma Q was like the liaison to Ashtar. It was like Ashtar's personal assistant. If Ashtar's too busy to send me the message, then I assume it's Gamma Q. Then, of course, we have Ashtar Command, which is the whole fleet under Ashtar's command, Lord Ashtar himself. And then I have Archangel Michael above Ashtar, which that is a little bit subjective as well, because from everything I've understood, that Ashtar and Archangel Michael are almost like directly under Lord Sananda or Jesus himself, and they kind of work in collaboration. Maybe sometimes Ashtar's a little bit under Michael, maybe sometimes Michael's a little bit under Ashtar. They're sort of like, what would you call it, like co-workers, the Galactic Federation of Light. So above that, of course, we have Master Sananda, who is the same Jesus that they worship in this church. It's just his story went beyond the resurrection and the crucifixion. And he's been working hard on our planet ever since, which the church has not updated their records. But I don't hope they agree with this information.
I wonder why.
And then above him is the Galactic Confederation. Now, this is the same thing as the Galactic Federation of Light. There's a lot of different ways to say the name of this, but Galactic Federation. I have subcaptions for all of these as well. What's it say? The government of the great central sun. So that would be like the political organization of the galaxy. The way we have the UN on this planet, which is a satanic organization, ideally we have a benevolent organization in the center of the galaxy, and that is the Galactic Federation of Light, the government of the great central sun. And then beyond that, going into other dimensions, is the Interplanetary Federation of Free Worlds. Or wait, pardon me, interdimensional. These things, there's a lot of different names for them, but there's light forces in other dimensions as well.
Absolutely.
Of course, a lot of people say the Pleiadians are in the 5th dimension, while we're in the 3rd dimension, mostly on Earth. But there's entities, benevolent entities from even dimensions beyond that, universes beyond that, and they are in contact with the Federation in this galaxy and other galaxies, and they all work together. So maybe this is like the fairy realms, you could call them, but all types of interdimensional entities out there. So that is, in my approximation, what the cosmic hierarchy is. Going beyond this planet, that's the forces of the light, mind you. I would assume that the dark has a hierarchy as well. And that's who it's constantly at war with. So, Commander Sananda is, like I said, the Bible left an open-ended story. Where did Jesus go after the resurrection? We have a little Sananda section on here. That's how important he is to the Ashtar timeline, that he has his own whole little bubble on the Ashtar timeline. It's very pertinent questions. Where has Jesus been since the resurrection? It's not answered by the Roman Catholic Church, and it prefers to ignore all of that and forbid it as heresy. Just sitting there doing nothing for 2,000 years now. I think he's been very active. It sort of brings us to the idea that there may be royal bloodlines that do go off this planet. We have royalty. Most people here probably only know the royals of the UK and England, but there's royals in a lot of different countries, and these people are very well connected on Earth, and it's very possible that their connections go right off the planet, and there might be even other bloodlines that we don't even know about. And what I found, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of black nobility. It's sort of the evil nobility of Italy and Europe, but within the black nobility is the white nobility. And that can just be, one sibling that decides to be good when the other sibling is evil. And that happens more often than you think, and those are the ones that get buried in history. They don't become the famous ones in history, but the nobility, which I believe Jesus is a part of, they say all the nobility came from the Merovingian bloodline, which is Jesus' bloodline, that it's a mix of the dark and light. So, confirmations of Ashtar. So this is kind of a few different ways that I personally get confirmation, other than going to Giant Rock and experiencing synchronicities. When I'm working on my diagrams in my room on my computer, sometimes I'll hear a tapping coming from the Ashtar poster. And the other day this happened when I was looking up a password. Okay, I have this long list of passwords, this 3 pages long. And I was looking up a password for something. The password happened to be Ashtar command, 2441. And I hear pop, tap on the poster right when I read that password. I was just like, okay, all right, get that. And also my healing web, I had it framed with plexiglass instead of regular glass, and that thing's always making noise, creaking and cracking, when the temperature changes. But I've found that those noises correspond to sometimes when I'm asking a question to my guides, I'll hear so that's one way to communicate. I said it's exactly like in the movie Interstellar when after Matthew McConaughey goes through the wormhole and he's in what you could call the Akashic Records, and he's like pushing books out to tell himself something previously in his life through time. And that's how I feel like the Pleiadians give you messages. I'm saying here, it's not exactly normal that I've just made all these diagrams and happened to stumble upon Ashtar Command in my search for some form of benevolent higher power that is of the light. When I created the energy map, another one of my diagrams, I walked out one night, I looked up at the Pleiades, I walked back inside, and I looked above my bed and I saw the entire diagram complete above my bed before I made it. That was kind of like the healing web, but even more pronounced, that I had literally just been out there looking at the Pleiades, came back in and was like, okay, that's what the diagram's supposed to look like. So it was pretty easy to make it. All I did was, draw what I had just seen, and if you see the energy map, it's pretty complicated. Maybe this isn't as impressive when I don't have the thing to show you, but it's not something that you just think about of the blue. Only the Pleiadians have this technology. There's a war going on many different planes, physical, astral, etheric. Sometimes big storm clouds are actually space battles taking place. The most powerful weapons are kept strictly out of the hands of the evil. This is the main reason the Pleiadians are required to carry out guardian missions on the physical plane of our planet. They have agents, starseeds, light workers working for them, all embedded all over the earth. It's almost like a mafia, but the mafia of the light. Maybe we shouldn't use that terminology. There are those who save and there are those who kill. Throughout everything I've done the past few years, I'm kind of going to breeze over this, but I feel like my higher consciousness is either connected to Archangel Michael or Archangel Michael himself, because I just feel this really strong need to protect people, to save them, even though, if we save everyone, it's going to be overpopulation, but that's just my mission. I got to save people. Michael is known to work with Ashtar as well, as I mentioned earlier, and it's possibly the intermediary between Ashtar and Sananda. All right, I'm going to skip over Cricket Command and Commander Corton. Okay, we're on here. So I want to talk a little bit about connecting with Source, Prime, Creator, God, and the Akashic Records, because I feel like that's what I've been doing a lot with connecting with Ashtar. And how do we get downloads? How do we tap in? How do we get information that goes beyond what we've learned in school, what we've researched online? How do we tap into higher level of information? Well, I've had a really amazing experience just recently in what you could call a prototype medbed that one of our friends has purchased called a Verify device. Now this is a plasma healing device that I also have made a video about it on my YouTube channel that really gives you the full story, but just to breeze over it briefly right now. I was drawn to this device actually by the Pleiadians. It was very synchronistic that they threw a book off my YouTube partner's bookshelf that was about the HIV epidemic and what the cure for it would be, and they were saying that the cure for it would be a Antoine Prior device, which is actually the device that my friend has bought is inspired by Antoine Prior in plasma healing technology. And so it's just very synchronistic the way that book flew off. My friend bought this device. So in this device, not only is it healing to the physical body, but it is enhancing psychically. And I've been using this device once a week for the past 7 weeks. And when I'm in this machine, between these two plasma bulbs that are on, I get so many downloads, just rapid downloads, just being shown diagrams, images that are just, it's hard to even document. I need to actually write while I'm in there to catch everything. But it's a very profound experience. And so, this is one way. This is like a technological way that we can tap in. I don't expect everyone to go and get one of these devices because they're $25,000. But you can book an appointment with Ross, and he's in Cincinnati, and that's the closest one to here. And so I recommend everyone try it. Of course, there's ways to tap in and get downloads without the device, but I just wanted to mention that today because it's synchronistically connected with the Pleiadians, and that has been a rapid experience of me getting downloads. Ashtar is assisting with this Great Awakening by sending us light codes. So light codes, in short, are messages from outer space, from benevolent entities that give you information, instructions, knowledge. And actually, while I was in the Verify recently, I had an experience where Source or Universe Spirit showed me an analogy of the Akashic Records that I thought was really powerful, and I want to share it with you guys really quickly today. So I was in the Therapy between these plasma bulbs, and they show me a telephone operating board like the 1960s and 50s, except it wasn't exactly like this. It was like a very old-fashioned hotel, like almost like you consider like The Shining or something, and it was just this row of attendants all dressed like in perfect uniforms, like all super happy, smiling, and they're just sitting there like waiting to connect you with whoever you want to be connected with. And you know, the way it worked in the 50s and 60s, when you press 0 on your phone, you get the operator, and you say, hello operator, or they would say operator, and you would say, can you put me through to whoever? And this is how the actual universe and the Akashic Records work. That, I mean, you could maybe just go there yourself directly, but as a way to envision it, and I've seen several different versions of the Akashic Records and different journeys, but this one was a really powerful one, that you actually have operators there to assist you, and you say, you know, say, I would like to talk to my dead relative. And they just patch you through. You're talking to them, you know? If you want to talk to Ashtar, just, you know, do your meditation, of course. Be in meditation, or, you know, be in your Zen state, you know, and just say who you want to talk to, and they will connect you. And whatever pops in your head afterwards, I mean, there's obviously sometimes static in the transmission, but you can assume that that is, you know, you're tapping in. That's how you get through. So I thought that was a really profound analogy that the therapist showed me. I think I better wrap this up. I'm getting hot, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to wrap this up with one transmission I got from my Aura B Codex channelings. This was Codex 5, so this is towards the end of the channeling when I hadn't even shared this one yet, so this is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone. So I thought this was a really good message. This is from 3/2, I think that would be 2020? Yeah. 3/2/2020 is when I got this message. When you press a crystal into the palm of your hand and close your eyes, do you hear a message? Who does that message come from? Whomsoever would hear that message must judge it for himself, for it is he who will glean wisdom from it, if it is understood correctly. Location will soon no longer matter for those on the path to ascend. It shall matter more what you do than where you do it. But you must go where your mission sends you. How to attune the body to the geomancies and the biogeometries that are needed to provoke the ideas, to receive the blueprints, as Tesla and Van Tassel and those before. You are not far from the future you seek, but in time you'll advance far past where you are at this moment. And when you control time, you control the key to open the door of all doors, to open the magic stargate, to receive the ultimate downloads. And what more would you need but a giant rock? Then why so you waste thy precious time? Make haste to uncover the secrets that will enable the glorious times that await. And you had every tool you would need at your disposal all along. A145 is my Palladian code name. So I want to end this with two little affirmations or mantras. The first one is the Ashtar affirmation, which came from Tuella, and it's right here on the Ashtar diagram. It is, I am a guardian of the light. I am love in action here, cooperating with Ashtar Command. And then the mantra of the Galactic Federation, this is the program, this is the plan, and it shall not fail. Thank you very much, everyone. Do we have time for questions?
We've got a million.
I'll take a couple, maybe two questions. Any questions? One.
I thought it was really fascinating what you said about clouds. I've had similar experiences.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen apparitions of, say, dragons or faces in the clouds?
God,
along
yeah.
with
Whole cities.
Yeah, I've seen like spirit animals, dragons, faces,
Yeah.
a lot of
Likewise.
things. And actually, I've seen you before in Serpent Mound.
Yeah.
One year at Woodland Altars, I saw like a straight up cloud ship. I mean, it was like a perfect like oval. And we don't get lenticular clouds around here. I mean, there's just certain days when you're like, something different's
You can
going
feel
on.
it.
Yeah, you feel it too. But yeah, there's a lot of messages you can get from the clouds. I mean, I think from my first CE5 I did at Serpent Mound, I saw like the eye of Ra and like the head of Horus, and just, you can see all kinds of like spiritual experience stuff in the clouds, and it's really important to pay attention. And most people don't at all. It's not just the lenticular clouds, it's all clouds really can give you messages, yeah.
Your phone can capture
Thank
all
you.
your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I know you mentioned clouds. How do you feel about like the animals or dragonflies, butterflies? You ever pick
Well,
up
I
anything
skipped the
from
part about Cricket Command. I have several animal spirit guides. I'm really connected with dolphins, frogs, and mantises. Actually, mantises helped me with the energy map along with the Pleiadians. I'm super connected with the mantoids. That's a whole other story though. Yes, animal spirit guides I believe are just as important as looking into star races. And I think a lot of the star beings are hybrids as well. You know, after we evolve from nature, you know, start combining humans with other beings to become chimeras. There's all kinds of beings out there.
Yeah.
And I suggest looking into all of them. Yeah, what I've talked about today is, it's not even really part of the deep state mapping project. In terms of my file architecture on my computer, the Ashtar command or the Ashtar timeline is in a different folder from deep state mapping project because it's so different. Deep state mapping project is very analytical. It's very like empirical based evidence, written record. Whereas this is completely, you know, channeled. You could say subjective, but when you look into everything, it's not really subjective. But it's a different thing, you know. It's not necessarily you can find a confirmation on it. You have to look for confirmation inside. And I plan to eventually, once we've fixed the world, gotten rid of the cabal, and educated everyone on what they need to be educated about, I want to focus more on what I call new age artwork. You know, just more kind of, you know, pretty images, and not having to look into all this darkness. So that's what I hope for the future. All right.
could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
Yeah.
Establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.